ونزلنا الذكر وإنا له لحافظون.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Peace be with you. We are starting the month of Ramadan, and we have been experiencing the time of confinement over the last weeks and days, and already started our inner journey to get the essential of life, because everything around us has changed, and we are now obliged to come back to ourselves and to ask ourselves essential questions as to our life. But now with Ramadan we'll start a new journey, and this spiritual journey, it's demanding, it's not an easy one, and what we have to do is to come back to ourselves and to come back to this very specific relationship we have with God in our daily life. And the central dimension of this relationship is, of course, the Quran, and we know this, that Shahru Ramadan huwa Shahru al-Quran. The month of Ramadan is the month of the Quran, because it was revealed during Ramadan, but more importantly, this is where we really have to ponder, we really have to read it, and we need to try to get the very meaning of this Quran in our life. Having said this, it's important, just when it comes to our reading of the Quran, to understand the meaning of revelation in our life before even starting the journey through which we will go during this month. And I would say that there are three main teachings here when it comes to the Quran and to the very understanding of what the Quran is for us as humanity, but for us as an individual. The first dimension is the notion of revelation itself, because the Quran is a revelation. It means that in fact God is sending us a message. He sent many messages before, but this last message, as we understand it as Muslims, is a message where God is calling us back to Him. In fact, it's a book of remembrance, a dhikr, and this is what we find in the Quran. Inna nahnu nazzalna dhikr. We have sent the remembrance. This remembrance is the very meaning of revelation, and we need to get this because we are forgetful. Humanity is forgetful. We are losing our way. We are missing the very essence of life and truth in our life. And revelation comes to us to call us back to the very meaning and, of course, to God. This is the first teaching. The second teaching, and this is also important, is that the Quran is not a book of science. The Quran is a book working for us as a light, shedding light on the reality, shedding light on the world, shedding light on ourselves. But it's not about scientific discoveries, it's not about scientific truths. In fact, we know this, that the scientific truths of today could be the scientific mistakes of tomorrow, because this might be the evolution of our knowledge is changing. So we should avoid trying to say what we have now as scientific knowledge is what we find in the Quran. We should get it right. Nothing in the Quran is against science, but not everything which is scientific is found in the Quran. Because the Quran has another function in our life, is to shed this light, to give us and to show us the way, and to remain connected to the truth, not through the scientific truths, but understanding that all the scientific truths that we'll get through history are going to confirm the truth of the book. So nothing against science in the book, but not all the scientific discoveries are in the book. That's an important point in the way we deal with our own history, and I will come to this in my introduction now to what I will try to do over Ramadan this year. The third dimension and the third teaching, I would say, is that the Quran, in fact, is the very word of God. It's God talking to us as a humanity, but talking to us as an individual. So there is a specific relationship here, a communication, a dialogue between my heart and God, between God talking to my heart and calling me back to Him. This is important because the words are not going to change. The word of God, the Quran, is not going to change. Why? Our readings are going to change. The meanings are going to be different depending on when we read it, how we read it, and how old we are when we read it, and our life experience when we read it. Meanings are going to get out of the book, and the book is the same. One book, many meanings. And this is important in our life as we are experiencing the spiritual journey, but also in the way we are going to implement some of the rules. Fiqh here, it's important, depending on the environment, depending on the culture, depending on the situation, the historical situation, we need to understand that one book, one word could have many meanings. So these are three teachings that are so important for us in our relationship with the Quran. A specific light, helping us to remember, not against science, and helping us to come back to a very dynamic dialogue between our heart and God. These are the three dimensions. Having said that, what I'm going to do over Ramadan is to look at the book and to get the historical teachings that are coming out of the book. In fact, if you read the Quran, you understand that there is from the very beginning something which has to do with the conception of God and the conception of humanity, and then the conception of the world, the universe, time and space, and then there is a specific history, a sacred history and a history of human being. What we will try to do is to go from one verse to another verse to get the very meaning of this. What happened before the creation? What we have in the Quran in this dialogue between God and the angels, and then what happened with the language, and what happened with the first two human beings, Adam and Eve, and then what happened between the first two human beings in this struggle that they experienced, and then through all the cycle of prophethood when it comes to Abraham and then Nuh and others. So we'll go through history to get this understanding of what history is telling us about ourselves in the Quran, and what the Quran is telling us about the very teachings that we can get through this history to understand our life, our personal life, and our personal journey. So the Quran is talking about history not in a scientific way, but in a spiritual way to help us to understand history has a meaning. Get it from the Quran, try to find your own meaning, the meaning of your own life in this history to help the human journey towards God to be a better one, to be one which is based on principles, on spiritual light and deep understanding of the meaning of life. This will be our journey during Ramadan. Every day, inshallah, 10 minutes, not more than that, even maybe less, through one verse, just to get some teachings of our relationship with God, through the Quran, and what the Quran is telling us about our human history. Don't forget to tell the people you love that you love them. Life is fragile. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.